G'day everyone, can everyone hear me? Cool, let's get underway. Hey everyone, my name is Dylan Alcott. Great to have you all here today at the Entrepreneurs with Disability, A Secret to Business Success Forum. We've got a pretty awesome panel and some familiar faces in the room, so it's great to be here for what's going to be a pretty informal day where we can hopefully all work together and work on a bunch of business ideas that maybe you have, but also hear from some experts about some of the great stuff that they've been able to do within their careers. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, or any other elders that are in the room today with us. I'd also like to recognise the Australian Federation of Disability Organisations and their CEO, Ross Joyce. Ross, where are you, mate? G'day, brother. Who are hosting this event today. Thanks so much for having us here. But also, this event wouldn't be possible without support of the Victorian Government through their Every Opportunity, which is a Victorian economic participation plan for people with a disability. Now, something else, some photographs will be taken throughout the day as well. So if you're not into photos, please let us know. But I am into photos, so if you want to get a photo, let me know. As long as you tag me on Instagram, because I like followers. They'll be standing in the back of the room, so there'll be a lot of people around for that. Also some housekeeping stuff. There is an accessible toilet just at the back opposite where the elevators is. The only thing is, Christina, you agree, it's a bit small, isn't it? So there is another toilet up on the 7th floor, is that correct? Where we can get room keys if you need a bit of a bigger bathroom, so please hit us up. Morning tea and lunch will be held out here in the foyer. There's also water, a drinking station for dogs near their registration area, as well as I think they can go to the bathroom out near St Paul's Cathedral in case they have to. Otherwise, they can just go to the bathroom here. I don't care. This is our day. You can do whatever the hell you want. All right, so let's get into it. As mentioned, my name is Dylan Alcott. You might know me as a tennis player, the guy from the ANZ ads, get on top of your money with ANZ, eating egg sandwiches. But I also am the founder of my own organisation called Get Skilled Access. So we're a consulting and training organisation working with governments and corporates to help them better understand people with a disability. We're good? Sorry, mate, with a disability. I think the biggest difference in what we do at Get Skilled Access is all our consultants, all our trainers, everybody has a disability, trying to show governments and corporates the big opportunity, not only when you employ people with a disability, but also improve your products and services so people with a disability can become consumers as well. Sitting to my left, first and foremost, is Christina Ryan. She's an active leader in the Australian disability community for over 20 years. She's pioneered and used mainstream forums by women with a disability at the United Nations. She now mentors and teaches effective use of the UN rights activists globally, while also working as a leadership coach for people with a disability. She's worked for 20 years in the community sector, but recently in 2016 founded her own organisation, the Disability Leadership Institution, as a professional hub for leaders with disabilities to build and support other disability leaders. She also got nominated for a Telstra Business Award. I think she was robbed because she didn't win, but we can talk a little bit more about that a bit later on.
You're always the winner just for being a finalist.
Yeah, I agree, but you should have won. Stuff the other people. To her left is Jessica May. Jess is the founder and chief CEO of the innovative web-based Enable Employment, which is an online jobs portal which focuses on achieving true diversity in the workplace. Enabled Employment itself has won multiple awards, including the Stevie Awards, Women in Business Startup of the Year, Most Innovative Company of the Year. Geez, you're killing it, Jess. The United Nations National Disability Award, as well as plenty others. And to her left is Simon J. Green. Simon, my brother, you're an overachiever. Have a listen to this. Simon is a natural leader with a rare ability to build and manage creative teams. He's an arts entrepreneur who's founded and run 6 different companies since 2007. His business highlights include selling a TV series to a US broadcaster with an audience of 30 million people, building a production company to 6 staff for several clients, including Hewlett-Packard, ANZ, Nintendo, Network 10, Lifestyle, L'Oreal. Mate, you do lots of different things. We'll hear a little bit more about that in a second. All right, that's enough about me. Let's hear from everybody else. So, Christina, we're going to talk about you first.
Ooh, okay.
If you can give us a little bit of a brief about the organisation that you started, a bit about your background, and what led you to getting on the entrepreneurial path.
Oh, well, brutally frank, it was a 3 a.m. Sunday moment, and it really was, genuinely. I woke up on a Sunday morning, 3 o'clock, and thought, the problem with all this violence that I'm working on and have been working on for 20 years against people with disabilities, fundamentally it's inequality. And the best way to address inequality is to be in the room and to actually be the decision makers and the people running the place. Okay, it's time to get that leadership stuff going.
Beautiful. Now, why do you think, so you went from working in the community sector to being your own boss, essentially.
I was the boss in the community
true,
sector
True, you've been the boss everywhere you go. Don't be silly.
For a while,
yeah. Was that a tough decision to make, to go out on your own and do that?
Yes and no. I had no desire to be a business person. I've done it before, 30 years ago my partner and I had a small business and I really didn't want the long hours, the hard work, the constant pushing, all of that stuff. I'd done that, I knew what it involved, and I thought, no. I want my money coming in regular so I know what's going on. And somehow it just ended up being the right thing to do at that time. And it was time for me to get off the violence merry-go-round. It's hard work, it's not okay, it's bad for you. And I know that, there are people in this room who are working violence all day, every day, and it's bad. It's hard work, it's bad for your head, it's bad for your body. So it actually was a good time. I needed to get out from that, and so I started the Institute. It's an institute, not an institution.
Did I say institution?
You did, mate, and I guess this is a disability forum. You've got to be careful about those
Good
words.
call.
Yeah,
Apologies.
We don't do institutions at the Institute. So, I actually got it going. I was doing them both 50-50, which of course is ridiculous. You can't be a CEO and a CEO. You've got to do one. And so a year ago, pretty much now, I jumped off and here I am.
Do you wish you made that decision earlier? Or were you happy with the timing?
The timing worked okay, actually, and I gave it 2 years from when I first had the idea, and that was last month.
Beautiful, good job. Now, Jess, can you tell us a little bit more about enabled employment and what led you down this path?
Mine wasn't a 3 a.m. moment, it was a long sort of
Well, by the way, was the 3 a.m. moment after a couple of wines? That normally is what happens at 3
It
a.m.
was a Sunday morning, so it's highly
Exactly right, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
It's when the best ideas happen.
Oh, yes.
So mine was, I have a mental illness that I sort of coasted through life because I can hide it. So I didn't disclose because I didn't have to. And so it was actually a big bonus for me. So I have quite severe anxiety, but it makes me a workaholic. So I prefer to focus on other people's problems instead of my own. And so I actually climbed the ranks really quite quickly. And so I was an executive level 2 in the government, and I had my daughter, and everything sort of fell apart. I had a lot of complications. I ended up with postpartum thyroiditis. I ended up with panic disorder. Didn't want to leave the house. And so when I went back to work, I had to do a graduated return to work program. I knew going back to work was the best thing I could do for me. And my doctor said, yes, I agree, but you can only go back 3 days. And so I fought. And she said, okay, you can go back 4 days. So in government, graduated return to work program is what you have to do. You're going to use some sick leave when you go back. So all the psychologist reports, everything like that went to my boss. So all of a sudden she knew I had a disability, and oh my goodness, overnight I went from well respected on the career trajectory to I don't think you can do your job anymore. I'm not going to give you anything else to do. I don't give you work because you're too sick to do it. And so it started an ongoing cycle of bullying, ostracisation. I had my whole team of 17 staff removed from me, moved around, and ended up going under a lady who had it in for me from the beginning and started bullying me really severely. So I sort of thought, well, that's not great. I'd seen so many other people get moved around and sort of face that discrimination, and everyone would always say it was because they were an underperformer, and all of a sudden I was an underperformer, and I know I'm not an underperformer. And so I decided we had to change that, and I looked at the government programs that are available, so the disability employment service providers, NDIS, all of that sort of stuff. But there's a whole group, so 75% of people with disabilities, pretty much probably 90%, who aren't eligible for government support, but face this type of discrimination. And so I wanted to change that. So I set up a recruitment agency that specifically focused on getting people with disability from that cohort into employment. So linking them up with providers who want to increase their diversity. And then we expanded over the years and Now we do the full suite of diversity, and that was mostly because businesses that we work with were like, well, I come to you for disability, I go to here for ATSI, I go to here for culture. Why can't you do everything? So we've started doing everything in the last year. So 4 years in, fortunately it's been going really well. So that's really the story of why I started.
Good job. So from when you first had the idea about doing this to when it actually became a business, how long was that period?
So probably 6 years. So my daughter's just about to turn 7. So I worked on it for a year. I took my idea to the local business chamber, and they were like, this has never been done before, this is amazing. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And they helped me to get a grant, go through a startup program. So it took me a year to develop it. We're quite a tech-heavy business, so my background's IT, so we have a whole computer system that works. So yeah, about a year to get it going, and then about a year to launch from there.
And you had people along the way that helped you throughout that process?
Yeah. So there are lots of different, so innovation networks, Canberra Business Chamber, startup programs, lots of mentors throughout Australia. So I was really lucky that I went to the right place in the beginning, and they helped me through that process. If I hadn't just turned up, and it was really, they had a day, come in and talk about your business idea for free for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I took it up and it worked.
Nice.
It was great.
Got to get involved somewhere. I like that very much. Now, Simon, over to you, my friend. You are what I like to call a serial entrepreneur. You've started over six organisations throughout your time. Can you just give us a bit of a short picture about your background and how you became to found so many different organisations?
Yeah, I consider myself an arts entrepreneur. All the businesses I've run have been in the arts, usually around media, film, TV, that sort of area, and digital. I studied film and TV at Deakin, then RMIT, and straight out of RMIT we started making productions, because it's kind of what you do. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, thinking about this question, most artists are entrepreneurs by trade. They're solo operators who have to sell themselves, make their way across. They're not employed. I don't know where you become a full-time employee as an artist. You are naturally an entrepreneur, so I just threw myself into that role without even thinking about the title. It wasn't until maybe 5 years in that I thought, oh, I guess I am an entrepreneur because I run lots of businesses. So for me, it was just, I didn't want anyone to tell me what to do.
Nice.
That's why I was an entrepreneur.
I'm with you. Sounds good.
Yeah. No one tells me what to do, damn it. I needed the freedom, I needed the independence, and I have cystic fibrosis, which when I was born had the life expectancy of about 20. So that gave me a drive to get as much done as I could before I kicked the bucket. And that just meant I needed to do as much as I could without waiting. And a job just seemed like something that would mean I'd have to wait. So we started a business, we grew that up over time because I was driven, so I was running it, and I was young, I had energy to burn. And we built it up over time to have 6 staff, and we were running it really nicely. And I started to realize, hey, I like this part, I like the organizing. I started as kind of a timid little editor sitting in a dark room and working away as an editor, but realized I liked the organizational part of running those businesses. So when that first company wrapped up, because my business partner wanted to go do other things, I kept doing it because I liked the freedom. I remember one of the first jobs we got, someone paid us to do the thing that we had just been trained and loved to do. And we drove back, it was a live filming of a cover band at the Elephant and Wheelbarrow in St Kilda.
Nice.
It was the first job we did, and we got paid for it. And we're driving back going, someone paid us to do this. This is awesome.
We're going to be there. We're going to be there anyway.
It's exactly. Right. I'm going home whenever I want too. And so, getting good at it and realizing that I enjoy the business side of it too, not just the art side of it, became my focus. I really wanted to build arts businesses that were profitable, and all my businesses have been. The ones that we as an entrepreneur, especially a serial one, you're going to have failures. We never had financial failures. We just had businesses that weren't going to grow, so we'd wrap them up, but they were never out of money. They were always at a profit when we wrapped them up. And in the arts world, it's really impressive. It's a big step. So now I'm working on a virtual reality startup, as well as running my old company, the X-Gene, making video. And the whole time it's just been, how can we make the arts profitable and still let you be creative in your field? So I hate that barrier between corporate video, for example, and creative filmmaking. It's a stupid barrier to create, and I hate that the industry's created too, where if you're a member of one union, it's really just about the creative, and then there's this other union for the corporate. All of us make our money from the corporate space, from doing ads and marketing, and it's just as creative if you want it to be. So that's been my focus. As an arts entrepreneur, how can we get artists to be better at being good business people? Because they are, whether they admit it or not, they are. So I really like to push that within the businesses that I run, and broadly in these sorts of events too, and getting people into that.
Great. I think one of the reasons why I was really intrigued to meet you is a lot of people have ideas. Ideas are great. The hard part is turning that into a business, turning that into a profitable business that you can live off. I know this is a broad question. I'm going to ask all three of you. We'll start with you, Simon. How do you convert that great idea? I mean, you've done it 6 times now. How do you get that great idea and actually turn it into a fully functioning business?
It's a mix of being practical as well as bravely stupid.
Yeah.
In some ways, you've got to be brave and be doing it, because this isn't having a job. And I was reading about self-employed Australians are reducing. The number of self-employed Australians is going down. I think it's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a long-term study and it's been going down over time, which might be about the economy, it might be about a stagnating economy. So you're in the minority when you're doing that. And as a small business owner isn't necessarily an entrepreneur either. It might just be a lifestyle business of running a milk bar or something like that. So you're in the minority to begin with. If you're someone with a disability, you're in the minority of a minority. So you got to be a little bit crazy to jump in there and start doing that sort of thing, because you're going up against so many different obstacles to build something from scratch when no one's ever heard of it before. So you have to be dedicated. You have to really understand your idea. I mean, I would suggest that you use the design thinking method. That's the approach that I've come up as a consultant. I'm a consultant for businesses. And the idea there is essentially, all right, so you have an idea. What is it that you are selling? You're going to be selling something, be it a service or a product or something in between. Who's going to buy it? Go find out who's going to buy it and speak to those customers as soon as possible. Because then you can start changing your idea to suit. The biggest fallover is having an idea and then just taking it straight to market immediately. That can work, but it's massively risky. When you're young, it can work, and that's essentially what we did when we started, was just chuck it out there and see what would land. But we were lucky in that we kind of just happened to land in a market that was looking for a lot of video work. So you can be lucky, but one of the best ways is just say, what is my business? Who am I trying to sell it to? Most importantly, always the who. It's funny, as a storyteller, that's what I always do. Who am I telling this story to? Who's my audience? All right, now I'll make the work to match that. It's exactly the same for the business. So that's the starting point. Who are you selling it to? Who are you relying on for money? Understand them as much as you can. Then start changing your idea to suit that. And it has to change. That's a big thing too. You have to be okay with your idea changing. Those who will not let their ideal change, you'll fail.
Yep.
That's actually interesting, because I'm going to intervene.
Yeah, go for it.
We went, when I say we, it was me at the time, but completely the opposite thing. We did what's called lean startup. So literally between having the idea and being up and running was about 6 weeks. It was that quick.
Yep.
And you're quite right, jumping off a cliff, it's complete risk, and you just got to have the guts, and away you go. You've just got to do it. But the thing that I was really interested in was actually getting it happening, because I thought you can spend a year working on getting the product right and actually doing some market strategy and having a look at this and having a look at that. I've done all of that because I've run organisations for a long time and started new projects and started new ideas in that space. I knew what that took, and I thought, hang on a minute, I don't want to do that. I'm either doing it or I'm not. And so jumping off the cliff and actually doing it straight away, and literally all we needed was a couple of things, business name and the domain name. And everything else came after. Everything else came after. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that's the model to go with for you, but it might be. A lot of people, things don't happen because they actually spend their whole time trying to get it right, getting the perfectionist thing going. And I think of all of us as recovering perfectionists. That terrible thing about, I just have to get this absolutely right. And I was talking to one of our entrepreneurs in the DLI membership a couple of weeks ago, and she was really pushing this. I've just got to get this. We have to do this and this, and I'm thinking, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Get out there and do it. Start Instagramming this stuff. Just do it. It's that hesitation, which means you're either going to start or you're never going to start. Take a risk. Jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
Good advice.
I'm a perfectionist, so I was, when we first started, well, I was a government, so very risk adverse, so I've got like 500 pages of risk assessments before I went out there and decided I was going to do it. But my original idea was to do something similar to like Freelancer for people with disabilities, and that's what we launched. It was meant to be completely self-service. I wasn't meant to be having a lot to do with it. We were just going to take a clip off the side. And so when we launched, we had it took me a year to get there because I was like, it had to be perfect to launch. But we had 1,300 people sign up overnight looking for employment. The other side, not so much. And that's when we started to realise that there wasn't really a big market for people to go out and do the self-service. And so we pivoted and became like a full-service recruitment agency that assists people to go through. And then we pivoted again to be full diversity.
That's the change.
Yeah, and so you've got to be willing to take your little baby.
And so 6 years later, is it the same vision you had right at the beginning?
It's similar. Like, it becomes a lot more about money the more you go on, which I hate. I like the whole, I'm going to change the world. And then we've got investors and they're like, when are you going to make a profit? Okay, I'll do that. So it does become a lot more about that. And the longer you're in business, the more it's the same. So, you know, it's not that whole new thing every day. And it's about how do you continue to be a sustainable business and make those changes that you can.
How do you go with that balance? I mean, it is a balance. Like, we're all, especially, you know, if you work in the disability sector, like some people in this room, I'm sure they do. How do you go with that balance? Because we all want to do the right thing, but you've also got to make it, you know, a profitable organisation so you can live your life and look after investors. In particular, how do you go with that balance from like consumers and customers looking in as well?
Yeah, so I think probably there's a few angles. So when we started, I was told like, this isn't going to work, you know.
People think you're a charity vibe.
And then it was, you know, people wanting us to do so much stuff for free and all of that sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah, really pushing back against that, like, no, we're here to make money. And we were there to make money to show you can make money. And that's really what we were pushing for. But I guess because I took investors, there's a whole lot more pressure. I had great investors who were willing to give me a whole lot more time so we could do what we wanted. But then they get to a point where they're like, no. So it's about making that change. Like, now I sit on government advisory boards, which is really slow, and so I can see little changes that we've made over that time, but you've really got to keep that passion, otherwise it just becomes about, you know, doing your job and getting the money in, and you start to lose that ability to be disruptive. Like, there's new people coming in now, I'm not the one. Whereas when I started, I was the only one sort of making these new big waves and change, whereas I'm old news now. You know, like, we need more people to come in and do that change.
Yeah.
Christina, do you want to go, Simon?
Just really quickly, just about risk, it makes me think of, I feel like, I do feel like that's a strength that some of us with disabilities have, because I've given a talk before about the fact that if you're looking at death or a life that's difficult compared to what might be normal for an able-bodied person, the risk of a business failing is nothing. That's not so bad. Who cares?
It's not like being stuck at the railway station at midnight for 3 hours on your own.
That's terrifying. Yeah. So if someone doesn't like your product, at least you're not dead. That's my theory on life. So we might be uniquely benefited. We might be uniquely designed for that. So
are we better at risk? Maybe we are, or maybe we just. But those of us who every day just getting out of the house is actually, it is like jumping off a cliff. Or, you know, the travel thing. You know, I've had jobs where I've had to just go to a state I've never been to before, and I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea what the airport's like. You'd be doing this all the time.
It sucks.
And you just think
losing your wheelchair in somewhere rural is shit house.
Oh, that one. Yeah. So you're just winging it. You're constantly winging it, which is a really high-grade skill for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I think it gives that perception as well. When you've got other things going on in your life, it makes you not care as much about something like that, which makes you enjoy it more as well. I think it can be seen as a negative, but can really be seen as a positive as well, because there's other aspects of your life that you are focused on. So this is just a part, it is not my whole life. So as a result, you can make decisions on that, I think, through a good lens. But I mean, there are barriers. There's barriers for any entrepreneur, disability or not. Christina, we'll start with you. What are some of the big barriers that you faced when you first started your organisation?
I guess the big barrier I faced was that I was actually really sick. I shouldn't have been doing it. I shouldn't be working at all. You know, I've had this with so many, particularly women with disabilities over the years. You know, we visit doctor after doctor, and they all tell us we shouldn't be working, and it's like, well, bugger off. You know, and I'm either working or I'm not. And Trish is nodding furiously. So that was probably the big thing. It was actually, you are utterly insane for trying to do this now. But the rest of it was easy. You know, I had the skills. I had huge networks in the disability community. And, you know, my God, the community is fantastic. I love our community. So all of those sorts of things were real assets, and I think the biggest barrier was really probably me and my own stupidity in pushing through when I should have just been lying down for a bit.
What about you, Jess?
I faced a fair amount of discrimination at the beginning because we went through sort of a mainstream startup accelerator. I just thought I was running a business, and then everyone was like, "Oh my God, this hasn't been done." It's and so
I've had all that. I've had exactly that.
Yeah.
I've had even the Telstra Awards people.
Yeah.
Yeah, bloody Telstra Awards should have won. Told you.
It's all ableist bullshit. They're full of this ableist thing about people like you can't do this. It's like what?
Yeah, all about how many kittens you saved in your Telstra applications. So we always made that joke.
And if it's disability, it must be charity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was pitching to, get a grant, what are you going to do if you lose that money? This comes back to what you were saying. I remember saying, well, I'm probably far more resilient than anyone else. So if this fails, this isn't the worst thing that's happened to me. I'm just going to get back up again and be able to dust that off. And that's a big sign for resilience. And I had people saying when I was pitching for investment, I had one of the best pitch coaches in Australia and the US say to me, "Don't tell anyone you've got a disability." And I was like, that was the whole reason why I started this business. So
what did you do about that?
So I cried a lot. And then I decided...
And then what did you do?
Then I decided, so I'd made this whole thing when I started the business. I said, I'm not going to put up with any form of discrimination. I'm going to call it out 150%, because that's the issue in
That's
this
the
world.
point of it, yeah.
Yeah, and so I ended up calling it out. I wrote a letter. I said I was removing myself from the accelerator because I didn't want to work in that sort of environment anymore. They all came in. He lost his job over the whole thing, had to write me a huge apology letter. And that wasn't what I was trying to do. And he was so well respected, and for me to just stand up. But he'd said a few other things, like he told some of the women that they should wear stripper heels. He was that kind of guy. It was mainly those sorts of things, just people thinking I couldn't do it, investors not wanting to invest because I had a disability. What happens if you have a mental health breakdown? I'm going to lose all my money. You're not, probably, because I'll get back up.
What do you think we can do to kind of get rid of some of those unconscious biases around that?
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Talk about it. So when I hire anyone to my business, we predominantly hire people with disabilities, I always say you have to talk about it. So if you're one of our staff members, and people liken it to coming out of the closet, they feel like they're never going to be employed again if they put it out publicly that they have a disability, especially if they have an invisible disability. And I've had people on my staff who are willing to talk about one of their disabilities but not the other ones, because they're concerned about what that will mean. But when we went into it, we had that whole commitment. We have to talk about it. We have to call out ableism when we see it. We have to call out discrimination. And it's been uncomfortable a lot of the time, but I've continued to go with that. And it's helped. I've seen some big changes in the landscape over the last sort of 4 years.
That's good. I think it's consistent, talking about it consistently as well. I mean, Corporate Australia does a lot of things on International Day of Disability. And it's morning tea. It's a flash in the pan, pretend like we care about it, and then we don't talk about it again for a whole year. And for people that work within these organisations, they don't feel trusted that they actually genuinely care if they are to come forward and talk about it. What about you, Simon? What are some of the barriers you faced in your 43,000 startups?
Isolation, I'll get to that in a minute. I think really like that you get people to talk about it, because that's something a lot of the artists I work with, they'll ask the question, should I disclose on my grant application? Should I disclose to a gallery? And there's a lot of fear. They don't do it. In the arts, I've noticed, they're not disclosing. They're only just starting to grab the power of it. And the biggest concern they seem to have is that they'll be considered a good artist for someone with a disability.
Yeah.
I have that fear.
And they think that, I mean, imagine if I was to do acting, if I said that, I would just get the wheelchair role. I couldn't be the boyfriend.
Yeah.
Or the funny character.
Yeah.
You are the funny character in the wheelchair.
And
Is that right?
Statistically, you won't.
Yeah.
Statistically, on screen and TV, I was looking at the survey they did where it was representation of different minorities, and the disability sector was the worst represented. Interestingly, the Indigenous sector was the best represented, but also just other ethnicities were really poorly represented compared to the number of characters who have a disability or are of a different ethnicity compared to the population percentage. Ours was the worst and the lowest, and the role was always someone who was there to have that disability, because that was the shining moment for all the other characters to realise something about themselves. And so talking about it, I think is powerful. I've always disclosed my entire life. I was a little preppy giving talks about cystic fibrosis and was in the paper and stuff about it.
Nice.
I won CF Victorian of the Year when I was little.
Yeah,
Because I did communications. I got a big giant block of chocolate that was enormous.
Career highlights. I like it.
Good fun. Forget about that. I was so
This
little.
this is actually, I mean, you're in there, Simon, too. The Disability Leadership Institute has a members community, so it's a discussion space, only for the members. So it's a safe space, and usually we've had a couple of moments. But one of the most constant topics of conversation is this one. You know, should I actually be talking about my disability while I'm at the interview? When do I actually tell them about it? And so you have to be disabled to be a member of the Institute. Even though lots of upright people try and become members, you have to be disabled. But it's interesting because that topic comes up repeatedly. And what we know is there's a lot of people in there who are members of the DLI who are not openly disabled in their workplaces. And I think it's not just talking about it, I think it's actually being it, like this stuff, you know, it's actually having profile people with disabilities in the community. And one of my party tricks, and if I'd got the Telstra Award, if I'd actually won that one, Dylan, my speech, I'll give you one in on the speech. One of my party tricks is to say, okay, name me 5 leaders with disabilities.
Yes.
And everybody says Stella, and I say, no, live. Thank you.
Yeah.
Live people. Graham Innes, and some of them come up with Dylan, and or Kurt.
What about John Howard?
Okay, he doesn't openly get out there and talk about being a disabled person, so that's an interesting identity one. But
As in former Prime Minister.
yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So, but only some of us know that. So it's kind of this interesting space. Very few people can come up with 5. And then I say, okay, now take out the Paralympians, no offence.
Yeah, Dylan, Kurt and I are the same person anyway.
That's right, yeah. And
Who
people
cares?
are left with 2. You know, if they've got to 5, they're left with hardly any once you take out the Paralympians. And not because Paralympians aren't fabulous people. This is my mate Dylan.
G'day, guys.
He's great. It's because that's actually been the only path seen
Correct.
to leadership in this country at all. And it's such a narrow path, and it's, excuse me, but a bit white. You know, just a bit white. And recently when I was having a conversation with the Federal Minister, what did she do? She referred me back to the Paralympics Association.
Oh, no way.
So the lovely Lynn Anderson. And I said, what? I said, I'm actually trying to talk to you about leadership. I'm not talking to you about, you know, I know those people I'm already talking to. It's that stuff. People don't know that we even exist. And look at us here today. We're inside our own community. Where are the mainstream business people that should be in this room finding out how we do it, because we're actually successful business people? A successful business makes money, otherwise it's a hobby. So, you know, here we are actually earning our income and paying other people. I've got staff, you've got staff, we've all got staff.
Paid millions to other
You
people.
know? So we're all paying other people. Most of them are disabled people. And yet, people don't even know we exist. And that's because the media doesn't even think about us. We're not on Q&A regularly. You know, the media doesn't talk to us. We're not in politics. We're not running government departments. We're not actually making the decisions. We're certainly not making the budgetary decisions. We all know we'd make much better budgetary decisions.
For sure.
if we had the- So it's some of that, it's visibility, guys. It's about getting out there and being seen.
And I agree. I agree with that. With the work that we do, we encourage all the organisations we work with to talk about it, because they all are starting to actually care about this. They say, yet they're not brave enough to put it out there in case something happens. I mean, Simon, you're in the communication industry.
Yeah.
How do we change that? Like, what I know that's a big question, but what do we do to get, you know, more people with disabilities visible? I agree. Apart from when the Australian Open's on or whatever it is.
Yeah, apart from when you're on the telly, yeah.
I mean, you look at past case studies that are similar, and I tread carefully here because it's not the same. But when you said that there are people in the DLI, the Disability Leadership Institute, who don't identify as having a
Oh
disability.
no, they identify, they don't openly disclose.
Sorry,
Disclose.
disclose.
Yeah, that's different.
That's
Yep.
kind of like being in the closet.
You bet it
It
is.
sounds like it, because they're working
bet it
in a
is.
place, everyone around them has no idea about this part of their life. And I can pass as someone without a disability, because I walk around and unless you hear me cough, you just think I've got a cold. It's shocking that that's the case, because it sounds like the sort of shame that people had when it was not cool to be gay in the workplace.
I don't know if it's shame. Some of it might be that people get bullied unmercifully, and in fact,
Sure,
the bullying
the
rates
culture
are
around it,
twice
yeah.
that. But people lose their jobs.
Lose their job, that's why.
People
Even
lose
worse,
their jobs.
yeah.
The stories are so numerous.
And that's as bad as being gay in the 60s
That's
and
right.
getting kicked out.
All
That's
get-
crazy.
So
That's
high.
so old.
Yeah, they lose their jobs or they plateau within their progress up the corporate ladder because otherwise they can't go anywhere. Yeah.
And one thing I found too, when I made that whole push to go out and say that I was a person with a disability, and I've been in media and all that sort of stuff, and they always discount it. Or you don't look it. Or what do the people who are really disabled think about you saying that you're disabled?
We think you're fine.
I remember that was the biggest thing when I came out and sort of started talking about it. They're like, oh, how do you think they're going to let you into their community? I'm like,
Can I do a straw poll? I'm going to do a straw poll. Hands up if you've been told you don't look that disabled, you're all right. Yeah. And does it really piss you off? Yeah.
Disabled.
Thank you.
I mean, we're talking a lot about especially working for other organisations, but this is all about being entrepreneurs. So one of the best things about obviously not being your own boss is you can make your own decisions. What are, especially with your disability in particular, what are some of the benefits that you've found by being an entrepreneur? We'll start with you, Jess.
So just flexible work. So if I don't get enough sleep, I'm likely to have about 10 panic attacks before 10 a.m. And so I can manage, like, everyone knows me in the office that I will never be there before 10 a.m. unless I absolutely have to. But they know that they could contact me at, say, 10 p.m. and I'd still be available. So I've got 2 small children, a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I mean, I can manage my time with them. So my mental health is probably the best it's ever been. The resilience that I had already from the ups and downs in business. Yes, I have downs, but I still get out of bed and I keep going. So it's really about managing my own life, doing that work. I always worked, I felt like I was doing 3 full-time jobs. And now I can still do that, but I can do it at the times that work for me and with my family and with my mental health. So that's been the biggest thing. And then also that change that I've seen for other people who come and work for me. So I've had people who never thought they were going to be able to work again, who work for me full time. So one lady who didn't want to leave her house, she's the best media communications person you've ever seen. Never thought she was going to work again because she works all night for me, and I get up at 9 a.m. and there's her little notes for me telling me what to do. She exclusively works from home. So seeing that change and being able to enact that change has been probably the best part of that entrepreneurial life, and making my own decisions.
Cool.
I like that part.
Simon?
I think, like I talked about, it's about freedom and independence. I would agree. The answer to the earlier question about my barriers was isolation, because my disease, I can't be around big crowds. Like, I'm washing my hands in between because I can get chest infections. And that made me, I didn't realize it, but I kind of internalized it and became a little bit isolated, a little bit too isolated, especially when you're running a business that can be up and down. And I'd work from home for 1.5 years and get cabin fever because I wasn't out there in the world enough. And also the culture around the arts can be a bit of a barrier too, because we don't see it as a business, and the value of the arts isn't as high as it might be compared to some of the other commodities that we trade in the world.
Do you regret internalizing that?
I do regret it, and I was going to say the way to overcome it, and the way to answer the question about how to overcome, like how do we communicate better, owning it. Owning my label as a person with a disability and being cool with it, because I never used to really talk about it because I wasn't visually disabled. It was Stella Young that taught me to, because I knew her from the comedian scene, and I sat down with her and she said, you should write. We were talking about something else entirely, but she said, you should write for Ramp Up back when it was still out. And I said, I don't know, I'm not that disabled. I said it to myself, and she said, you should talk about that. You should talk about how you feel about that. And the first article I wrote was having an invisible disability, and then coming around to going, you know what, this does have its impact on my life. And I grabbed power from that, and then started to own it as someone with a disability who is an artist. Just letting myself, I would worry too, am I as good an artist for someone with a disability? But then I started to flip that around to other people who would say that, and I'd say, do I think I'm good? Fuck yeah, I think I'm good. So who gives a shit? I'm good, so go be good. And if having a disability is a platform to start talking about that more, talking about my art, do it, own it, take it. and it's
It actually is
opened
a
me up,
it's
and
a
I'm less
benefit.
isolated. Yeah.
It's a benefit. It is a
Yep.
point of difference. I think
Point of difference in a niche that you can own.
I think all the people in the room with organisations, no matter if you have a disability or not, the best leaders and the people that have the most cut through are people that are authentic to themselves.
Yeah.
They aren't being somebody that they're not.
Yeah.
And if you can embrace that,
Yeah.
society actually respects that. I've found in the work that I've been able to do and everybody in the panel.
And once you own it, I recommend everyone own that part of themselves that is a part of themselves. Don't let anyone else tell you it shouldn't be there. Own it, disclose it, and talk about it. Because from a communications point of view, the way you normalize something is to talk about it so much over and over again with repetition that it just becomes normal. An example, I cough horrendously every morning, but my housemates stop paying attention to it. But then they'd have girlfriends or boyfriends over, hear me coughing, go, oh my God, is he alright?
Is that
Should we
guy
call an
dying?
ambulance?
Is that guy
And my
dying?
housemates would go, what? Oh yeah, no, I forgot about that. That is how we work as human beings. And it takes repetition, and it's not going to work immediately. You think just because you talk about it once that's enough, but that's just not how human beings work, regardless of the subject matter. So talking about it over and over and over again until everyone knows about how you work, how you operate, what it is about you that makes you you, becomes normal. And then it just becomes the way that everything works around you. And running your own business means you can build a culture around you that lets you just build that from scratch.
That's the one. And it's interesting because I think this is, in some ways we almost have the keys to the flexible work dilemma in disability entrepreneurship. All of us are hiring disabled people as well, so it's not just about us. It's actually about how we operate as managers and supervisors. And I've actually found I'm in the best health I've been in for years because I'm actually physically in far less pain because I'm not killing myself going to an office every day, and that makes a huge difference. But I have a nap every afternoon. So do watch out for me today.
I'm jealous. That sounds delicious.
But, I'm still working full time and far more hours in the day than I should be. And I do stuff on the weekends, much to my partner's horror. But I'm actually, I have my nap and then I do a few more hours before dinner and then, I might...
And it works.
And that's how it... But it's that my team members know that. And so they know I'm having a nap in the afternoon, so they're not actually expecting me to be on air and to be able to answer something. They're all operating fairly independently. And it was a really interesting thing again with the Telstra Awards. They're kind of really male business oriented, and I mean that quite, in a respectful way, but the model of business they go for is quite standard. And so when I say to them, oh, we're totally virtual, every single member of my team actually works from the location that suits them. Some of them I haven't met in the flesh. They're on the opposite side of the planet. So it's actually about being comfortable in their own location and working in that space, which means they know what they're doing and they do it. And I can rely on them. They're good staff.
That's the future of work too. Like,
Of course
forgetting
it
about
is.
disability, my business partner's here and we run a future of work business. He runs a future of work business, I work for him. And we do research into this. Like, part of our job is to tell clients what the future of work's going to be, and that's what it is, being able to take
exactly what
advantage
we
of
do.
digital stuff. So if you're accessible, you're actually ahead of the curve, and that's awesome. Do it.
You
Like,
can be anywhere,
it's so funny.
and there are some people like you, Jess. You start a bit later in the day. I'm actually an early person, so I'm there on the couch from 8:30 at least. Sometimes a bit earlier, and and then there are people who actually don't start till 10 or 11. Other people who work better in the middle of the night, like your comms woman.
Yeah.
She's fantastic, actually, isn't she? So it's actually it enables us to actually operate as we best operate, and to encourage our team members to be doing that. And why isn't that actually what we should be doing right across a whole bunch of stuff? Sure, there are times when you need to have meetings, but only this week there was an agency, a government agency that I'm going to be doing some work for that needed to have a catch up, and we had a meeting, and I thought, oh, I can't add something. I need my nap right then, and I thought, no, be firm, Christina, do this. I said, okay, I can meet you at 4:30. That worked fine for them. So why not? Why aren't we doing that sort of thing? Why aren't we actually mixing it up a bit and really pushing those things and saying, we're working with disabled people here. This is how we do it.
Now, we've all talked about all the good things that we've been doing, and there has been some amazing stuff. Ever made any big mistakes? I think one of the best things about being an entrepreneur is you take risks, and sometimes they don't work. And I think often when they don't work, people get scared off a little bit, and they might not go back for more. Simon, you made...
What was yours? What was your big mistake?
Hey, excuse me, guys. I'm running the meeting, all right? So
We want to know.
I have the questions here. That is the benefit of being the MC. Simon, have you had any stuff ups along the way that maybe you thought you might not come back from?
you have to have stuff ups.
Yeah.
You have to be cool with failure. Creativity is trialing and making mistakes. It's because the essence of creativity is how do I get over a challenge? How do I overcome an obstacle? And you can only do that by trying things, failing, learning from them, and then learning the true way to overcome it. And the more creatively you do that, the more creative it is. My first big mistake was my first business partner. He just shifted his focus on what he wanted to do. We didn't handle our setup properly, so we didn't handle our exit properly. We hadn't put it down in the correct ways. And it meant that there were just very different expectations for what wrapping a business meant. And it was awful, and it lasted 1.5 years of burying this business and going through a really rough process. We just closed it up, sold everything, and then had to sell everything and pay off debts, and it was a rough thing. And it taught me the thing I learned from it: you got to fail so that you can learn. If you don't learn, the people I've worked with who don't learn from their failures are the ones I cut away, because you can't do that. But I learned to. My most recent business venture with Matt, who's here in the room, we business dated. We had this idea to run a business together. We knew what we wanted to do. So before we signed anything down, we just dated for like 6 months or a year of just like running the business, but lightly, and like exploring it until the point that we knew we were going to get to, say, like with that mark, all right, do we run this business or not? Mm-hmm. Can we get along? And just having honest conversations again. So that's what
that's tough to do as well, because I think that could have been, the people that I started my business with as well, same thing. Some people were on the same page, some weren't, because when you have a good idea, you just get bloody excited, don't you?
Yeah. Yes.
You get so excited and you jump in, and then you think back 18 months later and go, oh, we're on a different wavelength here.
Yeah.
How do you control that? Do you know what I mean? Like that's a great bit of advice to go the 6 to 12 months to find it out, but that's hard to do.
Especially when you've got no idea when you first start. Like I started right out of uni, like you did. You started your business before you run a business before. I guess go to these sorts of events and listen to what people say. I mean, if you're young and arrogant like I was, you just ignore it, but try not to. It's about honest communication, just like we talked about disclosure of your disability. It's the same thing. Why are you in this business? What are you trying to achieve? One of the things I think really helps is being deliberately negative. Like, what's the worst things that could happen? Lean into the fear, lean into the concern. And that's been the hardest thing, is when I have conversations with people who want to run a business, they're caught up in the excitement. And so when you say, what if it fails? Like, don't be negative, man.
Yeah, blue sky, everything's blue sky.
Yeah, blue sky thinking. Yeah. And that's dumb, because something bad is going to happen. So you have to basically think of the worst things and then relish it, and then say, oh, what if I'm an asshole? What happens? And then plan it, and then work out, okay, say I am an asshole. What are you going to do? How are you going to get out of the business? How do we do it in a way that's equitable? Refer to all the different resources out there about how to split equity, how to measure sweat equity and things like that. There's plenty of resources out there that we'll talk about a bit later. So lean in to the worst possible outcomes, explore them, write things down to cater to them, think about it as the worst thing that could happen, and then you'll have a plan.
Cool. Jess, mistakes, good thing, bad thing?
Yeah, I've made a few. So probably the first biggest mistake is I'm not a micromanager at all, so I give people a whole lot of trust. So the first person that I brought in is probably my second in charge. I gave her a whole lot of trust, and she used that against me and pretty much crippled my relationship with my staff because she was in between. And so that learning, you can step out and you can step away, but don't ever lose the touch of what you're doing. So as a CEO in the progression of business, you're doing everything by yourself at the beginning. The more staff you get, the less you're involved in the day-to-day stuff. And that's where it starts to slip, and I've seen that happen so many times. Business fails, and the business starter has to come back and build it back up again. So you've got to right staff is probably the biggest thing. The second mistake we made, which was only recently, was we put all our eggs in one basket, which is, we won a huge government tender for $4.5 million. It was going fantastic. We put on all these staff to manage it. And then that big multinational corporate didn't pay their $1 million bill for 6.5 months. So I had to get a loan. We only make 10%. The loan was 15% interest. So I ended up losing all of our cash flow because we didn't have a diversified project. And so, I got 50 people with disabilities and the like into work, but I nearly lost my business, and I had to get people to come and bail us out to keep us going. So I've learned that now, don't put everything into the one and think that project's going to be great.
Good idea.
We had another government tender lined up to begin that was signed, 99% fail-proof. I could have got a loan against that one. The government decided not to proceed 3 months after the date it was meant to start. So that was coming after the other one, so I thought we'd be fine. So that was probably the biggest learning. I put everything in there, and then I had another 6-month gap where I thought the other tender was going to be. So I had like a 12-month gap, and I had to try and build it all back up again. So I'm back on the books, exactly like I said. You get to a success point, you let other people run it, and then it fails. You have to get back in there and build it back up again. So we're doing that. So that's probably my two.
Good advice.
And you're describing what could happen to any business person.
Yeah.
Especially
when it's like David and Goliath.
Yes.
It was, they'd sold a part of their business to another company and they didn't want to do a tax return. That's the reason they didn't pay their bills. And it was all small businesses that they did it to. So we were fortunate that we didn't close.
But some others would have. Not good.
It's a big lesson.
I guess I've had a real benefit, in some ways the privilege of, because I've run a number of organisations over the years, and I'm, I guess, quite an experienced community sector manager, the actual running of things and the staff stuff and the knowing how to hire your friends without actually starting to hate them later stuff. I've
That's
done
a good
all
one.
of that.
That's
Oh,
a
it's a
good
big
one.
one. It's huge.
That's a good
huge.
point.
All of those things I've had, I've been burned over the years and I've learned a lot of lessons before it was actually my money on the line. So that was good. But I think the thing that's really been interesting for me in getting going with the business has been the bright, shiny thing syndrome. Yeah. Bright, shiny thing, which all entrepreneurs kind of suffer from. That's why we do it. And I, went right down a rabbit hole, which was actually not the original vision at all.
Yeah, of course.
And it was when I went back and had a look at the original vision, because I was actually doing some, I did a short course from there's some great mentors and people out there you can do short courses with. And I thought, oh, hang on, this is what I was already going to be doing right from the beginning, that 3 a.m. Sunday moment. And it was about disability leaders. It wasn't about all those other people. What am I doing talking to them? I should be talking to these, back to the community. And that was a really big decision. And we've done that for this year. It's probably been this year since about January. And it's that has helped us really take things off. So that was a good thing, yeah.
Just quickly, that's a really weird, interesting, hard to grapple distinction until you've lived it. You've got to have the vision for what you're after, but then the way you do it changes. But you do have to maintain the vision.
Yep.
And if that changes, it's a really big shift. And that's hard to see.
It's hard not to jump at shadows, isn't it?
Yeah.
Opportunities come up, you think that sounds great, and then 3 months later you still do it. Why am I here? This is a waste of time.
Chase the money. If you get too caught in chase the money, you lose your vision, and that's it.
Great advice.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take some questions in a sec, guys. Before we do that, we're going to throw over to Reg Eustace on table 10. Reg, how you doing, my friend? Now, Reg, round of applause. Was that a clap? Yeah, Reg. Reg, you're here to tell us about the new enterprise incentive scheme and what tools and resources are offered to budding entrepreneurs who might be in the room. Reg, do you want to come grab this microphone? And then we'll all be able to hear you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Daryl works. I'll go with Daryl, whatever.
It's a good start. NICE, New Enterprise Incentive Scheme. How bad a brand is that? The NICE program has been around for 32 years. It's the one sole employment services program that's been consistent over that period of time. And what we do in NICE is we provide people who are interested in self-employment with the opportunity to get there. The program's run all around Australia through NICE providers who are contracted by the Department of Jobs and Small Business. And there's 3 parts to the program. The first is that you go through a business management training program to learn how to run a business. And we've heard all the different things that that involves. How to run a business, and you end up in that process of putting together a very detailed business plan that enables you to immediately then start and run the business with a blueprint. That program takes you through all the different aspects of running a business, and what we see is people come to the end of that program with the confidence of having a go. The second part of the program is income support for 9 months, where you're basically given you're provided with a NICE allowance, which means that every second Thursday there's that money hitting your bank account and you know it's going to be there. So it's not enough to live on. none of the benefits that you get out of government programs are. But you know that's going to hit that bank account every second Thursday, and that's a level of comfort. The third part of the program, and in my view the best part of the program, is that you're given a mentor that you meet with four or five times a year to talk about how you're going with your business, bounce some ideas off, and basically talk to them about how tough things are. Those business mentors have got experience not only in running businesses, but also have experience in helping start-up businesses get going, which is a different skill or another skill in itself. The department recently did a couple of things relevant to what you're here about today. The first is they gave us a better brand, and they now refer to it as self-employment through NICE, so that it highlights that this is an opportunity to take control of your life because you've got a passion of something you want to do and get engaged in self-employment. The other thing the department did recently was give us the HD trial, highly disadvantaged trial. Another horrible bit of branding. And what they said to us as niche providers is, we'll give you a whole pile of additional places to be used up by people with some level of disadvantage, but we'll give you the flexibility to run those programs totally customised to suit the participant and their needs. The NICE program, one of the issues we've got with it is that the business management program that you're taken through is an accredited training program, and there's a whole pile, and any people here are involved in any level of education will know, the whole pile of compliance issues that really just makes it difficult, particularly when you're delivering the program over a very short time. Under the HD trial, we're allowed to totally customise the program to suit the individual person and whatever their needs and other issues may well be. Doesn't matter. Wish we could do that for all of the people in the program. But for those who participate in the HD trial, we can totally modify, and we don't have to worry about accredited training and all the things that go with it. That flexibility makes a big difference. We have not been good at selling the places in that trial, but the department has said it will continue. It's no longer a trial, and we can use any number of our niche places for people that have got some level of disadvantage, and in the process of doing that, totally modify the program. So I believe there's 60 or 80 budding entrepreneurs in the room here today. Here's your chance to learn some of the skills that you need to get your business idea up and running. Even if you go through the program of the development of your business plan and you come to the end of that and say, nah, that's not for me, that's a positive outcome. It's better than starting the business up and then finding this is not the business for me. So you can go through that the program, put your business plan together, and then you can go, that ain't going to work. Well, that's not what I want to do. And you can go look at something else. No problem. And you can do niche as many times as you like until you start your business, and then there's some restrictions. So that's the niche scheme. On your tables, there's a book that was published by the department some couple of years ago, celebrating 30 years of niche success. There's 30 stories in there of people who have been through the niche program and the success they've had. That's 30 out of some, doing some quick maths, 250,000 businesses that have been through niche. So encourage you all, if you've got a passion about a business idea, and I've been talking to a couple of you already, niche is a way of looking at that passion and really giving you an idea of whether it's something that might work and is something for you.
Thanks, Reg. Legend. Appreciate it, mate. Carly, we'll have your question in a sec. Is that all right? Just got to move over to Bronwyn on table 11. Bronwyn is from Launch Vic. Is Bronwyn here? Hey, Bronwyn. How you doing? Do you mind coming up the front and telling us a bit more about how Launch Vic can help out with new business ideas and startups today? Just a couple of minutes, if okay.
Hi, so I work for LaunchVic, which is a government agency which is set up to help grow the ecosystem of startups here in Melbourne. And we define startups a little bit differently to a lot of other sectors, but they're early stage businesses that are looking for hyper growth, so big disrupting global markets, Often they are tech-based, but not always, and usually sort of in the innovation sector. So we fund a lot of programs which help encourage people in different areas to get involved in startups. And we run a number of rounds with what we feel are underrepresented and disadvantaged groups in the sector, including migrants and refugees. And we've always supported female entrepreneurs. But obviously, people with disability is a very important part of our community, and very big on helping make sure that diversity and inclusion is just something beyond gender, which we talk a lot about in Australia, and brings everyone along on that journey. So if you go to our website and have any direct questions around what we're doing or rounds we're working on, if you email hello@launchvic.org. And also, in terms of helping us understand the sector more, the more knowledge we have, the better we can help people. So our door's really open to learning as well as to teaching.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Short and sweet. Love it. That's what you want. Now, guys, it's time to ask myself, any of the panelists, or anybody that just spoke some questions. I think we've got about 10 minutes.
I want to ask you what your mistake was.
We're not going to let you.
Which you managed to avoid answering.
No, I agree with Simon. It was the startup, the initial startup, getting too far down the path without having a proper arrangement. And I think that's probably the toughest thing. But these days, easily, it is, I have way too many shiny offers around, and keeping it streamlined as to what you want to do is really tough.
You need some leadership coaching, eh?
Yeah, bloody oath. No, that's wonderful.
So that'd be me.
All right, questions, please. Any, Carly, you kick us off. No, we can hear you, but you will for captioning.
It's on the way.
Sorry.
Jess is
Jess?
there, but Jess
Down
is
the
heading
end?
over to see Carly.
I've got a question about the NEIS program. Do you need to be unemployed or on disability support or job seeker support benefits? From my experience, being in the workforce for 15 years full time, we receive very little from the government. The government doesn't seem to support disabled people unless we're unemployed. What is the government doing to support those who are employed?
Good question.
Let me first of all say I'm not from the government. I represent the providers who are all in most cases not-for-profit organisations. Up until 12 months ago, the answer was unless you're unemployed and receiving benefits, NEIS was not available. I am pleased to say if you're not in full-time employment or training, it's available. So you don't have to be unemployed and receiving benefits, but you certainly need to be not in full-time employment or full-time training.
What does that mean?
30 hours a week.
30 hours a week in an office-based environment?
30 hours a week of employment.
Okay.
Now, what we tend to find is that people who are looking to come into NEIS who have an issue as to whether they are or are not full-time employed, they manage it so that they're not. Okay, and the government's definition of full-time employment in this regard is 30 hours a week. So if you can manage it to get to 28.7 hours a week, you're eligible for the NEIS. The only qualification to that is that if you're not in receipt of a government benefit, you will not get the income support. So you get the program and you get the mentoring, but you don't get the income support. But again, some smart entrepreneurs, as they've been doing the business management program and they can see this business idea has got some legs, suddenly they become eligible for income support because they're not full-time employed, they're unemployed, and suddenly they're entitled to the NEIS allowance.
But that still doesn't mean that we're independently employed. Sorry to be... anyway, thank you.
Sorry, could you just clarify that?
If we have to forego our employment to get support from the government, then it doesn't mean we're independently employed. And being employed offers us so much. I mean, being employed by a workplace and self-employed offers us so much. So to forego that to get support from the government, it just puts us back in that same place.
tend to agree that that's possibly the case. It is a program for people to go into full-time self-employment, and that's got that. But you can have part-time income when you're under the NIS.
Sure,
Cool.
thank you.
Thanks for your question, Carly. Next door, just next, Jess, next year.
Hello, my name is Sue Diamond. I'm a person with an ABI. I'm a parent of a child who has intellectual disability, and I'm an entrepreneur and resilient and difficult.
Aren't we all, Sue?
And have a reputation. My question today is congratulations to everybody on the panel, and thank you for that awesome information, Reg. The thing that I find is the invisibly invisible people with disabilities. For example, my daughter who has intellectual disability. Now she is absolutely would be an awesome entrepreneur, and yet there's never ever, or very rarely, is there any representation of people with intellectual disability or people with socio disabilities on any panels or on anything. Even the Q&A, it had to be a mum of a child on the panel, and I've got, and even though someone in the audience spoke, but my daughter is quite proud of her disability. We walk our talk, but she doesn't have any opportunities except minimalistic, and no opportunities to be able to advance her entrepreneurship because she can't really read, write or do maths. Any comments, I guess?
Yes, apart from our friend here with the psychosocial disability. But it's interesting because a couple of weeks ago, Karuna got onto me on Twitter. And you got involved in the conversation too, Simon. And, well, when I say me, it was actually the Institute. There's a me which is separate on Twitter. But the question was, what programs are there for disabled entrepreneurs to get going? And the answer that we came up with was, well, there's this kind of program going on right now, but really the answer is nothing. There really is nothing. So, Bronwyn, you've raised it. You know, we've got all these programs for women to do stuff. Now, I'm in the gender space. I've been doing that for a very long time, most of my life. But the reality is, when it comes to being disabled, there is nothing. We were talking about this before, Dylan. The expectation just doesn't exist. We're not supposed to be leaders. We're not supposed to be business people. We're not supposed to be people who might be out there part-time working or fully employed who want to change our track. There's very little in the way of formal ongoing assistance programs. About the best we do is the occasional project when somebody gets excited in government for about 5 minutes. That's got to shift. It's got to shift. And people are now thinking the NDIS is the answer. No. I'm living in Canberra. We've been doing the NDIS now for nearly 5 years. Do not think it is the answer. It is not. The answer is for people who are keen business people to get out there and do their thing. Mm-hmm. It is not actually another way of finding a support person for your day. So we actually need proper programs run by business people like the innovation hubs, like LaunchVic, all of those places that are around, but they are not actually doing anything for disabled people. They don't get us, they're not interested in us, they don't actually think we're there despite us turning up to all these events. And where are they here today? Okay, LaunchVic's in the room, I do apologise for when you're here. But it's that stuff that we have to start really thinking about. We have to be demanding, if you want diversity in these spaces, and we all do, if governments want diversity, if they think this is really important, then programs that are not, you have to give everything up to qualify as eligible, have to be established, and they must be ongoing. The purpose of the Institute in the very first place was we can't keep having tiny little leadership projects. We need an ongoing, sustainable presence of support to build and promote and develop disability leadership. That's the purpose of the Institute. It has to be ongoing. We haven't got that for business. Our most successful peer group right now is the Entrepreneurs peer group, and I wonder why. It's about the only place you can go as a disabled entrepreneur to actually share ideas in a safe environment with some of the issues we've talked about today, without it being about, oh, but you can't do that. There's something wrong with you, or aren't you good because you're disabled? We don't talk like that because it's the peer groups, yeah. So we have to have these programs, Sue, you're absolutely right. And they need to be done in a way, they need to be done in a way that is ongoing and that recognises the diversity of disability, because we are an incredibly diverse population.
Yeah, so I can probably just jump in a little bit. So I sit on the National Disability and Carers Advisory Council to government. So we had a meeting last week where we were discussing this exact topic. So someone from the NDIA came in to do a presentation. We've been talking a lot about the different paths to employment. So I sit on the Employment Working Reform Group. This was a huge topic for us. So we're talking about there's disability employment service providers for your mainstream employment. There's supported employment options. There's NEIS, but NEIS is for people who fit into that category, and we're meant to represent on that council the 90% of people who aren't eligible for government benefits. And we're talking about what is there for people who fall into this category, and when, especially people who from the NDIS are now starting to get their lives back, they'll probably take a little bit of time to get used to it and get comfortable that it's not going to get taken away before they come to that decision, but then they're going to want to start their own businesses, and what is there to help them? And they were sort of saying, well, there's NEIS and there's this, but what if they have a bigger aspiration besides NEIS? Like, what if they want to change the world? And that's where ideas come from, is the people who have lived experience, who have seen the worst of human society. They're the ones that make the biggest changes. And so there needs to be a whole lot out there, and I can say, fortunately, I have seen one. They've applied for a grant. They're delivering it for people with intellectual disability in Newcastle, and it's a startup entrepreneurs program. So it's starting. I've just put the person in who's going to be the program manager. They wanted good. They wanted someone to be with a disability to run that. Yes. She's brilliant. She's just starting. They're a nationwide provider. So if this is successful, they will look to roll that out. But there's other people that I'm talking to out there. There's another one who's looking at starting a gig economy one for people with intellectual disabilities. So it's happening, but it's not happening from government. It's happening from entrepreneurs with disabilities out there who are starting that push. But it is definitely something that's missing, but I can say that it's on the government's agenda because it's on our agenda and we bring it up every single meeting.
Right.
I'm just going to briefly finish on a note there.
I feel like Tony Jones here.
The thing we have to, that's right. The thing we have to be careful about is that we cannot see that self-employment is the replacement for a lack of proper
jobs,
workforce inclusion.
Correct.
That still has to happen. And this country is at the back of the OECD pack. We need to actually be at the front of it. So until we've actually got 15%, which is the disabled population of working age, until we've got 15% of the workforce, we can't just be expecting that all of us are going to go out and make our own jobs. Correct. That's not the answer.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Geraldine Madrill. I'm from Perth. I'd just like to say there is good news. The not-for-profit group that I work for, Valued Lives, has got a micro-enterprise project. There is also in Sydney, likewise people, and I've just been in Adelaide, that are encouraging and supporting people who want to have a micro-enterprise, mainly people with disability, but we do include other vulnerable people. My daughter has an intellectual disability. She has her own business. She's included in all the decisions, whether she can participate or not, but it's built around her in something that is reflecting her passion. It's an area that we need to push for, like you say, for government funding. We're trying to get it into the NDIS platform to be a legitimate way of self-employment. So it's happening, guys. We just need support.
Good job. Question from over this side of the room. I think I saw. Yes, over here.
So Tricia Maloney next.
Oh, okay.
Hi. Oh, you can see her hand because she's too short. Tricia Maloney.
Hey, Tricia.
Hi. I sort of want to change the conversation a little bit. So I've been running my own business for the last 12 years and I'm now getting paid for it. Woo. Right, which is really exciting because I want to talk about some of the barriers that you face when you... So my work is in providing advice to government and to other agencies. And often what we get faced with is, we thought you were a volunteer.
Correct. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Right, we've all got that one. Even to government departments. So I've developed my own strategy, which is actually sending my invoice to the minister, which works. They usually come around. But I want to know what strategies you've each used to be able to say to people, no, you need to pay me for my work.
I think, I'll just go real quick. I think the biggest thing, same as what we have the problem with the Get Skilled Access, is we are educating governments and corporates about the opportunity of not only employing people with disabilities but improving their customer service, if they do that, it's not a warm, fuzzy feeling they get. They're going to make a shitload more money as an organisation.
That's right.
So if they're going to make an investment in their business, guess what they have to do for that? They're going to pay for it. But it's changing the way that corporate Australia and governments think, because they think, oh, you're going to do this at the kindness of your heart because you're in a wheelchair, Dylan, and you want to help other people with disabilities. It's like, if you're going to make millions of dollars out of this, which you are, which I want them to do, because if they make their things more accessible, it means we can be more independent as people with disabilities. But as a result, I think it's that shifting the paradigm where they've got to understand that we aren't all out there just to do it. You know, we want to make a business as well. We want to live and become economic players like everybody else. And I think the trick is, because we all face it every day, and I'm sure everybody as an entrepreneur does, is we have to keep talking about that and keep hustling that and show them that we actually are going to provide economic benefit to them. So as a result, that doesn't come for free in any stretch. You know, there are great non-for-profits that do things like that, but even the non-for-profits have got to pay their staff. Otherwise, they don't have great staff that are able to work for them. And I think it's that constant conversation and sticking to our guns as well. If you think you deserve to be paid for what you're doing, well then stick to your guns, and there will be people out there that will pay it if your product's good enough.
That's it. It's interesting because I think it still goes back to that whole charity space. We're all charity cases. If we're working for charities. If we're running something, we're running charities. Well, excuse me. The Institute has actually partnered up with a new campaign running #PayForProgress. You can find it mainly on LinkedIn, but you know, it's out there in a few social spaces. And it primarily started as a gender thing about women, business women being paid, because women are asked a lot more to do stuff for free. So it is actually about people who are a bit more marginalised, which is basically not white men. And what we did early was the Institute got in there and said, okay, actually disabled women are particularly chronic in this space. You know, we're expected to speak at conferences for nothing. We're expected to turn up and do this sort of thing for nothing. I hasten to add, that's not happening today.
Yes.
We're expected to actually provide the number of roundtables I've been on with several people in this room. Sat there providing significant expertise. Everybody else in the room is actually there representing an organisation and getting a salary, and we're doing it on our own time. And all of the people who were doing it on their own time were, in fact, the disabled people. I chucked a wally that day. I just couldn't. I thought, no, this is too much.
Chucked a wally?
I chucked a wally.
I like that term.
Oh, don't you do those? Maybe that's
chucked
a
a
Queensland
wally.
thing.
I
I was
like
a kid in
that, yeah.
Queensland. It's actually not okay. So there is a movement that, as you say, stick to your guns.
Yeah.
It's got to happen.
Simon, and then we'll...
Yeah.
I talked earlier about our culture struggling with the value of the arts. So I come from the arts world. No one pays us. There's an entire online culture about people sharing how they never got paid for their work. Oh, you get the exposure. Oh, it'll be good for your portfolio. It's funny too, going into the startup space and hear everyone talk about startups and the future of technology and all these different changes to the future of work. I'm like, artists have been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
You got to stick to your guns, like Dylan said, and it becomes just a personal thing. Talk about money immediately.
Yeah.
First thing you talk about is money. If someone asks for a service that you're going to provide, give the detail of the service and then
Here's
say
my
it will
fee.
cost this much.
And also say
don't be ashamed of it.
you're a fool for profit. Let everyone know that you are there to... Exactly
Yeah,
right.
talk about the money, talk about it consistently. If someone rejects that, you don't want to work with them. Beautiful. Thank you very much for your time. We're a
Thanks for the free coffee. See you
yeah,
later.
cheers. See you later.
Yeah.
So you got to talk about it and talk about it immediately and just let it be a part. That's also about owning yourself, having power in yourself. You have to trust and be confident in yourself. If you're scared to talk about money, you're not valuing the work that you're doing. So you've got to bring it up. And if you're not doing it, you have to work on yourself and say, why am I afraid to bring money up?
Beautiful. Dean, comment or question? Just quick. Okay, we're going to throw to you in a second, so...
That's the question, really. My name is Dean Barton Smith. I'll use this time, but make it easier for people here. I want to talk about the queer elephant in the room, because I do professional mentoring, helping people with youth or disability to try and achieve whatever they want to achieve, because I'm very conscious that can be a very lonely environment, and how sometimes we've all been in the environment where we work butts off really hard in an able-bodied organisation, only to find someone who's not a disability advanced very quickly and very rapidly up the ladder, and we still have to work 3 times as hard to be half as good. So I can certainly understand that. I can share a personal experience where I pretty much volunteered to create an event to come into Melbourne. And I was working full time, and I found out the task to try and bring an event into Melbourne that warrant $8 million investment. Had to do that virtually voluntary. So at the end, with no marketing, nothing to show for it, just to show the story. You get $8.1 million, and then when you think that you have the potential to now prove to people that you can echo, I can get $8 million for this event, and I started with a marketing budget of $0. I still can't get the job for this to make this happen. So able-bodied people then start to take the job where you earn. I know the advocacy groups have worked really hard. This generated $22 million in economic benefit. So the question is, I think a lot of people I've mentored have expressed really fear that they have an idea, they want to make it happen, only to get stolen by disability service providers or other people, and then they are in a better position because disability service providers on a very healthy and financial nest egg can rapidly do something that a person with disability wants to achieve. So the elephant in the room, my question for you guys is, how do you protect yourself? How do you protect those other people who come up with an idea or passion to go through, only to know that someone will steal that idea or take advantage of it? And that's been a common fear I've got with a lot of people with disabilities come to me saying, I want to do it, but I'm going to fail because as soon as they hear it, they've lost it. I think that's something worth. How do we navigate that, and how do we?
Do you want that, Jess? Just short, really short, because we're going to go.
Yeah. So this is something that I see a lot, and it's not just for people with disabilities. It's anyone with a business idea. Everyone's really afraid to talk about it, it's. The biggest thing is your business is not going to get off the ground unless you talk about it. And you're not going to get the help that you need to get your business off the ground unless you tell people about it. You're not going to get that one piece of advice that helps to get your business going unless you talk about it. And I've just gone through it with my friend. She had a fantastic idea. She was really worried about the same thing, and I said, you have to go out and talk about it. And she started talking about it. She's now got funding. She's got a mentor. She's been given a whole other idea. Someone's done her logo for her. Someone's done a website for her. People getting really behind her, and it's pushing that momentum up and going. So the biggest thing about starting your own business is you have to have passion. If you start a business because you want to make money, it's not going to be successful. You have to have a passion behind it, because when you're at the lowest points, you need that passion to keep you going. And if someone's going to steal your business idea that doesn't have the passion, they're not going to be as successful as you. So have the passion, start the business, tell everyone you can about it, and be that one that takes it from them, because that's what you have to start to do. And that's how you start a business, is you start talking about it. So if you, and this comes down to things that have been patented and everything, you need to talk about it because you need that advice, and you're not going to have success.
I've got this great mentor who's over in New York. She's fantastic. Can't wait to meet her in real life. But she says you talk about it, and you talk about it because then people know it's your idea.
Yes.
The more you talk about it, the more that idea is associated with you. And it doesn't matter if it's a business idea or the subject for a book or what it is, but if you talk about it, then people associate it with you. So you're open about it. If you keep it close to your chest, then nobody ever knew it was your idea in the first place.
Also, protection-wise, the law is your protection. As soon as it starts to get to the point where you're a bit worried about someone stealing it, engage in a lawyer or a solicitor. And the hard part there is you're protected until someone attacks you. Then you've got to defend it.
Yeah.
So just be prepared for that part.
And legally protect yourself as well.
Legally protect yourself.
Yeah. Quick question?
Not a question, a comment.
Comments, good. Love comments.
I figure my life is about being an ability.
Hang on, do you want to get a mic just so we can get you captioned?
Hi, my name's Karen, and I figure I'm an ability advocate. You can't see my disability, you can see my ability because I'm standing talking, so I have an ability to talk right now in this moment. 10 minutes later, I might fall in a heap out there and be crying because I'm a nervous wreck, but that's okay. So what I see in the room is a bunch of people who have abilities. Everyone has disabilities. Competent businessmen have disabilities, they can't empathise, they can't blah, blah, blah. So everyone's just the same anyway, ability or disability. If we associate ourselves black and white as disability, we have all these barriers. We've got to reduce barriers. So I think we need to sit in the middle, not call us, well, it's always recognising abilities, because everyone in the room has abilities to learn, to think, to talk, to stand up. Just being in the room meant we travelled, we transported, we got here, we're in life. So we need to celebrate abilities, advocate for abilities, and not reduce barriers for anyone who sees it as a disability, sees their being in a wheelchair, because you use your wheelchair amazingly.
Yeah, true.
It's not a disability; it's an ability.
He can play tennis on grass.
True, that was bloody hard work.
So it's a difference. It's not an ability. It's not a disability. It's a difference. So let's advocate for abilities.
Yeah,
Thanks.
definitely, for sure. Guys, thank you so much. I know there's a few hands keep going up, but we've got a whole day. Get around and we can answer some questions. Now, every single person on a table, there's tables of 10s, roughly. There's a mentor on each table. We've run out of time. Are we going to introduce each other real quick? Very, very quickly, everybody. All right, so we're going to go around the room, meet them. After this, yeah.
After this.
After this. Tea's coming. We went overtime, guys. So we're going to introduce the mentors on each table who we're going to be using the network session. So we're going to kick it off with Joe Mbisi. Where's Joe sitting?
Joe hasn't arrived yet.
Joe isn't here. Silly Joe.
Oh, Joe.
All right.
We're going to start with Yasmin.
Okay, cool. Yasmin?
Hi, I'm Yasmin Gray. I'm the founding director of getaboutable.com, which you can think of like a TripAdvisor for people with mobility, vision, hearing, and other assistance needs.
You stole my idea, Trisha. I love it. I wanted to do that for years.
Oh, I want to talk to you.
Ah, well, let's team up. Yeah, I've been thinking about that for years. Good.
Right. Been asked to talk a bit about my journey. So it started on, and I will say it, even though my 11-year-old son says I shouldn't. It was a drunken evening with a friend.
They're very useful.
And we were lamenting how hard it was to travel with disabilities and just trying to get accurate information. That was back in 2008. Fast forward to 2014, that idea had been bubbling away in my brain somewhere, and I got asked to participate in a workshop getting the ACT prepared to be part of the ACT trial site for the NDIS. And as part of that, we were asked what makes life better. So a lot of what we're talking about today, not seeing the disability, seeing that we are, you say 15%, Dylan, I say 20% of the population.
Oh, no, I say 20. I'm with you.
It's workforce age, it's 15%.
Yeah, workforce, 1 in 5. Yeah, yeah.
20% of the population.
Yes.
What will make our lives better? And for me, it's all about travel and adventure.
Cool.
And so through that workshop process, I really made the ideas more concrete, and that helped me apply for a seed funding grant, which I used to start the business in 2015, and launched the website getaboutable.com in 2016. At which point my accountant told me this seems more like a hobby than a business, so we heard that comment before. But then in 2017, I successfully applied for a place in a startup accelerator program in Canberra called the Mill House, which is just about social enterprise. And for those who don't know that concept, I didn't know about it before I joined the Mill House, but it's about businesses that trade for purpose. More importantly, but not exclusively, of profit. So these are businesses that want to make a profit, but that is not the be-all and end-all. They are there for a purpose.
Cool.
And through that process, I've really kick-started a business, and it's been going gangbusters.
Good job, Yasmin. Very good. Round of applause. That's a mentor over here. We'll go to Trisha. Just 1 minute. Trisha, just a bit about the things you are doing, just real quick.
Okay, I'd rather give you 3 tips. So one of the tips is find out what you're passionate about, build your reputation, and then just wait for people to come to you, because they are with me. But I will tell you that I actually have a new project in mind, which is to build a hotel in Sri Lanka, because I just got back from Sri Lanka and it's totally inaccessible. So I'm telling everybody that that's what I'm doing. So I'm owning it. And from that has developed 3 more social enterprises. I'm going to run it as a social enterprise. So with me, I gave up work because my health failed. So I've always had a disability, but I have more than one. And I'm proud to say that I have a disability, because I think we have an ableist world. And until we start owning ourselves as being proud of who we are. So that's actually what's worked for me, is being proud of who we are and telling people, you know what, I actually have knowledge about my sector. So I work mainly in the family violence sector and in the health sector, so getting people access to services. Cool. And now the family violence sector calls on me and pays me to provide advice for women who are leaving violent situations. It's hard work, but I do the systemic as well, so I annoy government a lot. So that's my journey.
Beautiful, thank you. Dean, we've heard from Dean. Do you want to do it? We know Dean. Dean's one of the mentors. He's been killing it. We've got Ross. Where's Ross? Down the. Oh yeah. Just 30 to 1 minute, Ross, about yourself.
Thanks, Dylan. So on top of, so I'm the CEO of AFDO, but on top of that, I've been doing a lot of work over the years in developing business, developing ideas and initiatives. And so on top of generating for-purpose initiatives, I'm a business idea nut. I love thinking about it, I like looking at it, I like exploring it, I like reading, and I like developing ideas. Some of which I don't actually end up implementing, but I just like that whole process. I have two that I worked on a plane on a trip to AFDO up to Canberra that I came up with as well. So I constantly like to do that. I've done a lot of work in the community sector, and just give you a quick one of my community work. A founder, administrator and performer of Interchangeable Parts, which is a theatre of youth out in the west of Melbourne. And yes, I am a qualified clown, just so that people might want to know that. Creative, the Essendon Ethnic Fiesta, which was one of the first festivals in Melbourne celebrating culture and diversity. Street Health After Hours Mobile Medical Unit out in Western Melbourne, and also the CBD, focusing on homelessness and disadvantaged people. Co-founded and self-funded an NFP called Your Community, which is aimed at eliminating disadvantage and poverty. And we've been working on a thing called time banking, and also on Feeding Australia, providing a cheap meals program for people to get nutritional meals. So that's a couple of things I've done there. In business, really quick, I'll finish up. Milk bar, started a milk bar, yes, the good old milk bar. Did that was my first one. I've been in publication, I've done management consulting. I was contributing 15% of any profits earned back to charity and support. I've done telecommunications business and had a major telecom pinch the idea, which was a big learning for me. Cafe in Melbourne, started from scratch, multiple site video stores, remember those? Movieland, Video Easy and then Independent. And recently I've joined in with getting a business up, which is an Indian, Fijian grocery, food and product store.
Cool.
So I'm pretty keen on all sorts of business ideas and willing to help anyone.
Good on you, mate. Thanks so much. And our last mentor, thank you.
Yay.
Our last mentor, not sure how he got the gig, but his name's Martin Alcott, is my dad. And Marty, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you, Dylan. He told me to hurry. He's busting out the toilet.
Got to go to the bathroom, quick.
Oh, don't just put my TV.
Yes, so my latest venture is co-founding and the CEO of Get Skilled Access with Dylan, as well as I'm the chairman of his foundation, and my biggest tip is don't work with family. Thank you.
Good job. Guys, now we're going to now break for some morning tea. There's obviously coffee and some snacks out there. Now, in this break, please think of your 1 minute pitch about your entrepreneurial idea, or some questions that you might want to ask the people, the mentors that are on your table. We're going to come back in here at about it's almost there now, about midday. And this session will resume at about 12:20. But start networking, get around, chat to people you want to chat to, and we'll see you in a sec. Thank you. See you on the live stream. We love you. Thanks for coming. Is that right? See you soon.
You've got an idea. I have. The business plan. Is this your pitch? I just want who's the best person to give it to in the room? Could be you. Perfect. It might be the launch Vic person. Actually.
Workshop idea.
It might be the launch Vic person. That's her there in the brown jacket.
Okay, well, you hang on to that. I'll come back.
Dylan, have you mentioned the buttons up?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.